Hello YouTube, welcome to my new tier list of the new patch. And for the people that do not know me, I am just a professional coach that is challenger, and I'll be telling you guys what I think is OP in low elo and what is good in high elo. But the high elo will be on my Discord, but the low elo I'll fully explain right here. So basically, these are the changes in the new patch, and it's really big changes, guys. On the left side here you can see all the changes. So Vi, the passive got changed, fill sticks, extra damage on W, Kindred, the ultimate reduced, which is very big by the way, especially for low elo, and Nearly getting additional damage as well on her abilities, and Remus some extra shields, and Briar is a little bit adjusted as you can see, but it doesn't change that much. Let's take a look at the tier list and show you guys what's really good, okay? I will first start with Vi, okay? So where's Vi? 2% nerf. I would say that Vi in low elo is still very solid, so even though it got 2% nerf, I'll still give it A tier. Why A tier? Simply because this champion is always solid and it's a bruiser. Generally speaking, in low elo, bruisers are always pretty solid, okay? Fiddlesticks. Even though Fiddlesticks W got a little bit buff, that doesn't necessarily mean it became OP. It's still very good. I would say that, especially if you have a right team comp, which means that you have a Yo in mid lane, you have a Z mid lane, Tolo mid lane, and enemy team cannot buy mercs, it can easily be A+ even in lower elo, but I would say I would put it most of the times around A. Kindred, very good question. This is like usually B tier. Usually it's B tier. However, it depends on how low you are. If you're like really low elo, like in Iron Bronze, sure, I'll still put it in B tier. But I think the moment you get to like gold-ish, platinum, even silver-ish, I can see it being A tier. Simply because if you go Triforce now, and with the ultimate cooldown nerf, you have your ultimate quite often. So it's actually not as bad anymore. Like 180 seconds to 160 is very big, especially in lower elo, because there's so many fights. So I would put Kindred on 80 right now. If you want to pick up Kindred, I have a full unranked to challenger and a Kindred guide on my YouTube. So if you want to pick this champion up, I would highly recommend you to watch it. It's going to help you shit tons. And as for Nearly, where up with Nearly? Well, Nearly in lower elo, generally speaking, right, is not usually that amazing, simply because, you know, hit the spear and how to play team fights, make one mistake and you might feel useless. However, right now what you can do with Nearly is that you can play a bit of like poke Nearly, which means that you can go full AP and max range spear them, so you can go like Lichbane into even Rabadon and just play for poke, and it's not too bad. But usually it's C tier. Do I still put a C tier? I still put it C tier. But if you get to like platinum gold, I would easily put it B tier. But in very low elo, like iron, bronze, even silver, I would usually not recommend this champion, okay? Remus. Remus got a little bit buff as well. He got some extra flat health as well. But what would I do with this champion? I think it really depends. If enemy has a lot of on-hit champions, I still think this champion can easily be A tier. And it's not too bad. However, I would say that this champion is not always good, and I would recommend you as well, if you're lower elo, just play a bit more bruiser-ish champions. That way you're gonna learn more about the game, so I'm just gonna still put it B tier, but in some situations it can be really good, okay? Anyway, as for Briar, no cap, Briar is legit S tier in Iron Bronze. I feel Silver is like maybe A+, but the lower you are, the better. So that's how I kind of see it, right? I would say it's definitely S tier in very low elo. In, let's say, gold platinum, it falls a little bit off. I would say A+. So that's where I put it, okay? Generally speaking, low elo. But I'll put it S tier. I'm explaining fully my thought process, so you'll get everything. Where does Echo go? Remember, Echo a few patches ago got a Lichbane buff, I got a Rabadon buff. It got a pretty nice buffs overall, right? So I would say Echo is one of the most strongest solid AP joiners for low elo. It's like an AP carry that has some mobility and an ultimate where if you fuck up, you're good. So I would put Echo actually A tier. I could even consider Echo like A+, but I think A is like very solid because I think Echo isn't as good in 1v1, which makes him a bit worse in low elo. So that's why I put it A tier. Volibear. Well, it's an S tier. Simply S tier because this champion is pretty solid 1v1. It has decent ganks. It's a bruiser. And usually champs that are simple, that are pretty good 1v1, are pretty solid, and especially in lower elos, I would highly recommend this champion. Alright, Zyra, that is no touchy. In lower elo, if you play Zyra, This champion is not good. It requires too much positioning, and it requires too much like spacing as well. Usually champions that are mages and a bit squishy, in low elo, people don't even know what's a danger to you, so you might just get caught. And because it's bad 1v1, it's not so good. So I would recommend you to stay away from the champion. As for Brand, it's very similar in low elo. I think the moment you get to like, let's say, gold platinum-ish, I wouldn't put him C tier, I would put him B tier, but I still wouldn't recommend those champions. But in very low elo, like iron, bronze, even silver-ish, I would put it C tier, these champions. Xin Zhao, A+. I think Xin Zhao is very solid. One thing you have to keep in mind if you play Xin Zhao is to make sure you full clear and jungle track very well, and try to have good base timers around objectives and generally when you have gold to spend. If you do that, it's A+. It's pretty solid, I would say. So let's keep it A+. Shyvana, I think A+ as well. Why A+? It's a champion that can clear and play a bit slow in fights, and once you get like 1 to 2 items and you know a bit how to play this champion and just spit your fire, it's pretty solid overall. It's not even that weak 1v1. I would say that you might want to avoid fights in the early game. Try to sneak some drakes. If you manage to get one drake, keep farming. This champion scales pretty decent. So in low elo, I would recommend it. Poppy is a bit situational. Why is Poppy a bit situational? I would say Poppy is quite good, especially if enemy has more dashes and you're playing against champs like Lucian, you're playing against champs like Rengar or Lee Sin. But if they don't have those abilities, I would say it's like B tier maybe. But it could easily be like A or A+, depending on the situation. But yeah, I would put it on A tier. Jarvan. If you play against champ like Syndra and a champ like Jinx, I would say Jarvan's A+. It could even be S tier, but probably A+, because it's not that OP 1v1. But most of the times you want to lock this champ against champions that are immobile, otherwise it's A tier. But I'll put it A+, because most of the times in low elo people do pick champions that are a bit immobile, so it makes it a bit easier to kill them, and supports usually play enchanters, so it's easier to kill them. Alright, we're the Petalon. I would say assassins in general, in low elo, not it. As you get higher, I think it's better. Like maybe if you're platinum, it can be A tier, but gold and below, B tier. I would not recommend. I think there are better champions, more solid, easier to play, requires less champion mastery and less fundamentals to win. It's just very easy to play other champions. Alright, Gwen. So Gwen got several nerfs, and since other junglers are getting buffs, and Gwen is basically not getting any nice stuff, I would say in low elo, I would put a B tier. Simply because I think Gwen is a champion that's actually pretty solid. However, people in low elo usually tend to fight when they shouldn't fight. Sometimes doing nothing is better than doing something, especially if you play scaling champions. But people don't have that patience. People have ADHD, just fight everything, and Gwen is not really that good. And if you fall behind, your laners will keep falling behind. So I'll put her B tier. Kayn, definitely A tier. Why A tier? Because in low elo, people fight you for fun. You get your orbs faster, and that's really, really insane. So once you get red form and you're playing against melee champions, you're a happy man. Alright, regarding Nocturne. Nocturne is just S tier easily. It has good clear, decent 1v1. People don't respect Nocturne ult. People will overextend, so it's very easy to make picks. So I would definitely recommend this champ in Platinum and below every single rank. I think it's highly recommended. Pantheon, A+. Why not S? Simply because it still requires some skill, as weird as it might sound. I would say Pantheon is A+, because it's pretty solid 1v1, but it's not S tier yet. Because it's not like the most OP champion level 1. It's pretty solid, but it's not as easy to play as the other champions. And yeah, these are just like the biggest noob stompers, simply because these champs actually scale decently as well. This one, Briar, should be an A+, but that's in Platinum-ish. In very low elo, it's S, okay? Alright, Diana. I think Diana is pretty solid. I would say in lower elo, especially, I'll put her S tier, because this champion basically provides a very good engage, and as long as you farm decently, and you go the Bruiser build, which is Leandry Riftmaker, you're going to be very, very strong. So I would highly recommend you to play Diana if you want to pick up an AP champion. It's just a solo pick. Bel'Veth, oof. Bel'Veth is like, it's like probably A tier, I think. But the thing with Bel'Veth is that this champ is quite hard to execute, and threat assessment is... So when I say threat assessment, it's like being able to anticipate builds like Trash Hook, Knowledge Hook, and not fighting till they use the spell. In very low elo, like silver, bronze, I would say B tier. I think platinum, it can be A tier, but I wouldn't recommend this champion as it's a bit difficult and it requires a lot of fundamentals, more than you think, and champion mastery. If you miss either one of them, kinda sucks. So that's why I would recommend it B tier. Alright, Shaco. Where would I put Shaco, boys? I would say Shaco, I would put us probably on B tier. Because yeah, it can kill you level 3, but after that, the champ doesn't scale that insanely well teamfights. And because it doesn't scale that insanely well teamfights, I would say it's B tier. It's definitely not A tier. Because other champs just scale better, and low elo usually it's about fighting. Shaco, you need to create numbers, you need to be a bit tricky, but in low elo just fight, and you know, champ is just not that good. Alright, regarding Kha'Zix. Kha'Zix, sadly B tier. Most assassins are B tier simply because team fighting is not good and playing for tempo is very key. And if you don't know how to play tempo, it's just not that insane. So that's why I put it B tier. Monkey, Monkey is solid A or A+. I'll put it A+, and the main reason why I put it A+ is because it's very good against most champions that are in low elo, because people usually go AD champions. However, the weakness of Wukong is that you need to play slow when it comes to farming. So when I say that, most of the times you're just farming and you're actually not on the map, and you have to really decide well which fights you want to take and prioritize good base timers. If you have that and you fight for an objective at your strongest, you can win fights, but the problem is that you're clear so slow, so you're not in every single fight. So if you miss the aspect fundamental of jungle tracking, I would say it's like A tier, but if you're pretty good at jungle tracking, decent base timers, A+ easily. Alright, Mordekaiser. Not gonna lie, I think Mordekaiser is a pretty underrated champion, especially against bruisers like these. It beats almost all of them 1v1, no cap. However, it is just simply boring to play in a way, but I would say it's pretty good if enemy locks in a Wukong or something. It's a very solid champion because it can grab animated carry, just beat them up, right? But I wouldn't recommend to pick Mordekaiser if you have like double or triple AP in your team comp. You still ideally want to pick this champion if enemy team cannot really buy much MR, ideally. Okay, Viego. Now you guys wonder, where does Viego go in low elo? I would say it scales with time. If you're someone that's in low elo, but you actually played League of Legends for 10 years, I can put it A tier. If you're new to the game, C or B tier. So depending on how long you play League of Legends, I would say that's how good it is. It can even be A+. If you like have played Viego before, you know every single champion, it can be A+. But I think generally speaking, I think putting it on A is pretty fair if you played the game for a few years. But if you're new to the game, like 1 or 2 years even, and you're not playing that much, B tier for sure. So look at how long you play League and try to get a feeling of like, okay, do you understand the champion? Alright, Hecarim. Where would I put Hecarim? Hecarim low elo is B tier. Why is B tier? You need to stack your passive, and this might sound very silly, but whenever I coach people in low elo, they actually don't stack their passive. And the way they use their E, like a lot of champion mastery stuff and how to team fight, and knowing how to play slow with cooldown, is just not really there. So that's why I put it B tier. It's not very, okay, it's very straightforward, but not really at the same time. You know what I mean? So I'll put it B tier. Where would I put Karthus? I think Karthus is like probably B tier. Why B tier? Because in low elo, it's like people, if they're missing skill shots or they have bad tempo understanding and it's not the best 1v1, I just put it a bit lower in lower elo. In high elo, I think it's easily A+ or S, but in low elo, it's like B simply because fast clear doesn't mean good champion in low elo. Because people don't know how to abuse tempo, and because this champ is a bit immobile, it's very easy to get caught. That's why I put it B tier. Trundle. Trundle's actually solid A+. Because in low elo, people fight you, you're like, bum bum bum. I would say that Trundle is the best if you have champs like Orianna on mid lane, Syndra, Victor. Because Trundle later on doesn't scale that insanely well. It's more like a cock blocker. If you're playing as a Sign or a tanky jungle, you can just ult them, one-shot them. But you're not actually that useful in teamfights. So try to pair this champion with champs like just mages. Just mages, okay? Alright, Rengar. C tier. Yeah, sorry bros, but just don't touch this champion if you're low elo. You need to know your limits, you need to know how to play side lane, it's just not recommended. If you're behind, you're like an NPC. You're worse than any of these champions, okay? So no touchy. Listen, if you're in platinum, it can be B tier, and gold as well. But anything below that, just don't play the champion. There's so many other champions that can do a better job. Not recommended. Nafiri. Well, honestly, Nafiri is like a pretty decent champion, but here's my problem with Nafiri in lower elo, is that people don't know how to play slow, and because they don't know how to play slow, this champ is not as good. So usually you just wanna QQ a bit, and then, you know, depends on if you can all in, but you can't just go in, you know. You usually have to play pretty well with cooldowns. That's why I put it on B tier. Lilia. Okay, Lilia in low elo, poof. There hasn't been that many changes, and I would say spacing is kind of important. But since people aren't that good at spacing, I'll put it A tier. It's not that good at 1v1. It is actually if you know how to play the champion, but it requires you to know every single trick. In the future, there will be a Lilia guide coming out, so make sure to follow my channel. But I would say it's A tier. Okay, Talia. Well, C or B tier. Like I said, any champ that's a mage and squishy and immobile goes automatically in C tier. If you're like in Platinum, usually these mages can still be B tier, but Gold and below, ideally don't play those because it requires so much fundamentals, okay? Elise. I think Elise, actually, if you go Riftmaker, sorry, if you go Leandry build, I think it can be A+, simply because this champion, if people love fighting, Elise is really strong. And the scaling isn't even that bad. So in lower elo, you could go the Leandry build with like Rylai or Lichbane, depending on what you want to do, even Riftmaker, honestly. Or you can go for the one-shot build, which is the Lichbane, Storm Surge, Shadow Flame. But I would say in lower elo, after the buffs she received, even though her ultimate got a bit nerfed, her passive, she's pretty solid, I feel like. So I'll put her A+, even in low elo. Before I had her on B tier, but she got so many small buffs that she's actually pretty solid right now. I would say watch my Elise, Unranked to Challenger, and my guide if you want to make her really insane. Mastery in low elo, I would say that it's like people usually would waste their spells and Mastery can come and clean up. So usually it's pretty solid, but I would still put it A tier. I don't think it's better than the other champions, simply because the other champs can make more mistakes. Of course, if Mastery gets some free kills, he can get rolling, but I think that the champs on A+ are more consistently solid, I would say. But in the right drafts, Mastery is easily A+, but generally speaking, in low elo actually, people do pick enchanters and not much CC. So in that case, Mastery is quite good. Alright, next, Olaf. Okay, Olaf, I put it A tier. Why A tier? I think this champ is pretty solid. It's actually quite underrated. But if you fall behind, it's like a little bit of an NPC. But I would say the champ is pretty decent. I would recommend you to play Olaf if you enjoy playing the champion. It's solid actually, trust me. Nunu. Oof, where did I put Nunu? Nunu in low elo. I think it's like A tier. It's just very average. The win rate is probably around 50%. I would say that this champ isn't really that insane in the 1v1, but the ganks are pretty good, and it is pretty decent against most melee champions. So I would say it's A tier. Regarding Udyr, I would say A tier as well. I would even say A+, but I feel like the champion is very stale. It doesn't have many surprises. And in lower elo, the more surprises you have, the better, you know? That people don't anticipate. But Udyr is very straightforward, you know? So I'll put it on A tier. Regarding Evelynn, I'll put it B tier. If you get the passive, it's pretty good. After 6, you'll be invisible. However, I would say that it's not really that insane, especially if you are trolling your tempo, or you go for random play and trade kills, then the champion becomes kind of bad, and that happens frequently in low elo, so I'll put a B tier. One thing with Evelynn, if you want to make it work, farm, jungle track, use your ult, farm, and don't fight till you have your ultimate, and you can make it B tier, even A tier, but most people don't do that. Mundo, S tier. Why is Mundo S tier in low elo? Because it's very straightforward. All you have to do is just full clear base, get a Giant's Belt and a Ruby Crystal, and you can 1v1 almost everyone. And people will fight you, and the moment you get ahead, it's doomed for them. So I would put it S tier. Amumu, S tier, well, very solid in all elos really, in below Platinum below, because as long as you have like not an Ashe and Trash and Amumu in the same team, and enemy team can't really go cleanse or mercs, it's always going to be valuable. One thing you have to understand is that you don't want to fight without ultimate, and just give them the objective if you have to, and that's okay. But as long as you keep getting gold, your champion is going to be more useful in teamfights against most champions, and you should win the game. Maokai, like, just, it's fine. It's a fine champ, but just don't play Maokai. It's an OK champion, you know, like, it's, yeah, not much to say about Maokai. I would say that This champion is like solid, but it's just weak 1v1. It's pretty decent ganks, but I wouldn't recommend to play this champion because simply it is just not that strong 1v1. And I think in lower elos, the better champions are 1v1 champs. Kiana C tier, don't touch. You need to know every small trick. If you don't, it's kind of hard to make her useful. And it's an assassin as well. And the clear is not so good, so don't play the champion. Graves, B tier, simply because this champion is like an AD carry in the jungle, but it's kind of squishy. And if you don't really know what enemy spells do, or you're not really good at like dodging abilities, yeah, it's not that good. I would recommend to stay away from this champion as well if you're no elo. Nico. Honestly, Nico's like B tier. People don't know how to play against her ultimate, so it's actually pretty decent. It's actually okay. I would even say, nah, it's not A tier. It's B tier. I'll put a B tier. Anyway, Rek'Sai. Rek'Sai fell really far off. I know this champion in general in the past used to be pretty decent, but I feel like now, with so many changes, it became B tier. Even in low elo, which is kind of sad. I don't think this champ is that good anymore, so I'll put him on B tier. Skarner, B tier. In high elo, I think it's still pretty okay actually, from what I've seen sometimes. But in low elo, this champ is just no bueno, because if you miss your charge, your E, it's just doomed. And just knowing how to clear properly, looking for the right ganks, being able to recognize that. If you're not good at that, yeah, you're a tank and you're not actually that useful. Darius, B tier. After they nerfed the passive, I would say it kind of lost a lot of strength, so it's not as good anymore. I think that other champs are just simply better right now. Jax, B tier. The clear is just kind of slow at the moment. Because the clear is pretty slow and you're less fights, it's not as good compared to the other champions, and this is ok. Sejuani is B tier as well. This champ can be A tier if you match it with like melee champions, but if you have like enchanter support, it's actually okay. But I would say that it's not that insane 1v1. It doesn't scale that insane, so it's B tier. Zac, okay, sadly Zac is B tier in low elo because people don't know how to land their spells efficiently, and landing your E and Qs are so important. And if you can land it, it's A tier. If not, it's B tier. But I would say Zac is really strong, but sadly in low elo it's not as good. That's a C tier. Just don't touch this champion. Champions that have insane clear, but insanely not optimal team fighting are not good. And especially this champ in team fights is not it. And because as well bad 1v1, C tier. Gragas B tier, simply because this champ isn't as easy to play. You actually need to understand how to play slow and stuff, and other champs are just better right now. Well, Sylas, just don't play, C tier. Shit clear, you need to know how to fight. If you don't, it's doomed. Warwick, actually S tier. I would say platinum-ish, so even gold, A or A+, but in iron, bronze, legit gold tier, like actually. Silver is pretty solid as well, but gold onwards, I would say A+ or A. I don't know which one, but let's put it for low elo, S tier. Ivern, Weasel champ. We're not gonna rate Ivern, guys. But yeah, this is basically my low elo tier list. If you want to know my high elo tier list, it is on my Discord. You can check the link down below, and my Discord will be linked there, because making 2 tier lists for every single elo takes time, and explaining for another half an hour, not optimal. So I just explained the low elo tier list, as I believe that people need a bit more explanation, whereas in high elo it's a bit more straightforward. And yeah, this is basically my platinum and below tier list. And I wish you all a nice day. I'll see you in my future videos. Peace, boys.